Hello, welcome to our show. I'm Irma Baker, and I'm so glad to have a guest with us we've had before, only it's been a whole year since Mark has been with us. Mark Ludwig. Mark is the naturalist, is a naturalist, there are many of them there, in the Medina County Park District. And we love having him on because we have so many wonderful things going on in the parks. This time, Mark, tell us what we're going to talk about today.
Winter bird feeding.
Because
winter's almost here.
Oh, winter's feeling like
Yeah.
it's here. And I know that a lot of people, particularly people maybe who are spending a lot of time inside in winter, it's so lovely to be able to see the birds come. But I think there are some things we should know about that.
Yeah, I mean, bird feeding to me, I mean, I look forward to watching the birds all year round, but especially in the winter. There's just something about it. It's just winter is just a peaceful time, and with the holidays coming up and everything else. But it's just watching birds is just simple, and the older I get, the more that I want to just make things simple in my life, because everything nowadays seems a little bit more complicated. But just they're just amazing creatures to watch, and beautiful colors, and just amazing.
Well, you mentioned that with the holidays coming up and how hectic that time can be, that it's nice to have something peaceful, but it's also nice to have something that doesn't end with the end of the holidays.
Yes.
This goes all through the winter.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, you can feed birds all year round. It doesn't have to be just in the winter. In the winter, they definitely require more energy, more calories, so they're feeding more. So that's in a cold winter day, you're going to get a lot of birds coming in because they're hungry, and feeding is like an additional food source. It's not like if we don't feed them, the birds aren't going to find food. I mean, there's plenty of food out there. However, it's like an easier meal to get, kind of like we have McDonald's or Burger King, the fast food, drive through. That's kind of what our feeders are for birds. So.
I never thought about it, but it is like fast food
Yep.
for birds rather than making it from scratch, which would be going out and foraging
Yep.
from the plants that are available at the time.
Yep.
What kind of plants do what kind of plants do animals, and especially the birds, look to for food in the winter?
I mean, there's all kinds of different plants that produce seeds, from like anything from like teasel, which is kind of looks like a pineapple that has a lot of seeds in there. Just tons of variety of seeds out there, and also trees or shrubs that produce berries, attract a lot of birds as well. Obviously, a lot of the insect, eating birds, or at least some of them. Or like warblers, for example, are migrated, down south to where they find more food, from like flying insects and stuff like that. So I mean, there's a lot to eat out there, but providing food is kind of like an additional, food source for them. And I'm going to talk about some of the feeders today. I'm going to talk about some of the seed to use, and then also the types of birds that we see at our feeders.
Well, let's start right now with the feeders. I imagine if somebody wants to get into bird feeding,
Yep.
especially in winter, it helps to have the kind of feeders that are going to be best for them. What can you tell us?
Well, we'll start with the seed. The best seed that I recommend is what is called black oil sunflower seed. And we have a chart I put on there. It's but if you're looking at it to the left side, it's basically most birds prefer the black oil sunflower seed. So that's what I recommend when you go to the store. Buy that. It's maybe a couple dollars more than the mixed seed, but the problem with the mixed seed is a lot of it is filler. You get a lot of millet that a lot of birds may not eat, and what they'll do, especially like in the feeders, is they'll pick out all the millet, throw it on the ground, and they'll go for the sunflower seed. So it's kind of like wasting.
Oh, you know what? That's very interesting. Yep. Because a lot of times you see all this mess
Yep.
below the feeder, and you think, oh my gosh, they're not getting everything and that, but that's not something they eat.
Yeah, it's not really preferred by a lot of birds. So right in the middle towards the top is the black oil sunflower, and you can get that anywhere. Some additional things that you can put out, suet is great for woodpeckers and chickadees. That's the fat that comes in blocks, and they have many different varieties. I recommend like a peanut mix or peanut butter mix. They seem to prefer that more. And then there's the thistle seed that's all the way to the left. It's a tiny seed, very expensive. The finches like it the most. However, the finches also will eat black oil sunflower seed, which is less expensive. So I once again recommend the black oil sunflower. And then as far as the feeders are concerned, I have a whole bunch of pictures to show you. This is a tube feeder. The next one is the thistle feeder, which has tiny little holes in it, little slots in it, because the thistle seed is so small.
I was just going to ask you, those two slides look like the same to me.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
What was the difference between them?
but it's just the size of the hole in the feeder. So because the black oil sunflower seed is bigger, it's so they can get it. The tube feeders work better for that. But this,
so if you're going to get into winter bird feeding, you want to make sure you have a feeder that has the right hole
yes.
for the right kind of seed that you're going to be getting.
But most of the feeders you buy are for sunflower seed. So. And then next slide, we have what is called a house feeder or shelter feeder. So these are for like bigger birds like the blue jays or cardinals, birds that might not be able to land on the tube feeders. So those are good. And then the next slide is kind of an interesting feeder. It's in the shape of a ball, and a lot of birds will hang on to the side of it, and they'll eat the seed out of it. The only problem with this feeder is that the seed gets wet, and a lot of times when seed gets wet, it'll get moldy, which is not good. So it's kind of a neat feeder, but I wouldn't put a lot of seed in it. That's probably too much seed in that slide right there. Also, we feed at different levels, so it's important to feed at different levels because you have birds that feed on the ground, like juncos or sparrows. They are ground feeding birds, so sprinkle some seed on the ground, and we usually put it on a board just to keep it a little bit drier, but feed at different levels. So the next slide is our tray feeder. So this is kind of up a little bit higher, but it's off the ground, as you can see. Just a different variety of feeder.
Well, let me ask you something here as we're looking at these, because I've never been familiar with the idea of ground feeding or this kind of tray feeding. If somebody has like an old cookie sheet or
Sure.
something like that.
That works, yeah.
How about something like an aluminum pan? Would that reflection be a problem?
That would be fine, just to keep it off the ground, just to keep it, it's still going to get wet, of course, if it rains or snows. But if it's not sitting on the ground, it'll stay a little bit drier. And I've even used like a boot tray.
Oh, sure.
Like a plastic tray, and put that out there. So yeah, you can use a variety of different things. The next slide is window feeder, which is kind of neat because you can see the birds up close. The only problem we had with this feeder, this is at our Susan Hambley Nature Center up in Brunswick, and the squirrels actually jump on it, so it kept on falling off. So eventually we eliminated the feeder because it was just so hard to.
We need to talk
yeah,
about
we will
that,
talk about
what
squirrels.
we do about squirrels.
And then the next feeder is the suet feeder, just a cage that we put on a tree. And then you can also, at the next slide, we have a dome feeder, which I'll mention in a few minutes here about the dome feeder. And then next, we have the squirrel-proof feeder, which is actually spring-loaded, so the squirrels jump on that, and the food, because they're heavier than birds, the food source is like cut off for them. So they work pretty good. And then next is a little lean-to feeder, and this is just so birds feel safe. There's a lot of hawks that will be attracted to feeding areas, and a lot of maybe ground predators, maybe like a cat or something. And it just makes the birds feel a little safer, and it also keeps the seed dry.
Okay.
So just a little lean-to.
So what you're saying there, yeah, lean-to, I guess that's a good word for it, because you put the seed underneath.
Yeah.
And so a predator bird flying above wouldn't be able to see the
Yep.
birds eating
The
there.
bird
And
just
yet
feels
there's
safer.
still
Yep.
escape opportunities if there is a predator like a cat or...
The only problem that we had is that when the cats hide under that, so it doesn't work. But next we have, and then providing water for the winter. They actually have a little heater in this particular one that you plug in, and it's not like a 90-degree temperature like a jacuzzi or something. It's I think only like above maybe 40 degrees or something that it keeps the water at, but it keeps it from freezing during the winter. So.
I had no idea there was anything like that available.
Yep, and it just helps to attract birds to your feeding area. And then next we have a couple of the feeders that I recommend.
Oh yeah, you brought some along to show us.
And the first one is tube feeder. These are made by Droll Yankee, and these are the two that I recommend. I have like a top 2 feeders to buy. If you're going to buy any, these are what I recommend. And so this tube feeder is, the reason I recommend it is because it's really easy to clean. You want to at least maybe once a month, twice a month, take your feeders apart. So this one has a pin right there in the center that you pull the pin, and the feeder, all the perches and everything fall apart, and you can clean those with like a 10% bleach solution, and just make sure that it dries, and then make sure you wash it afterwards. But you want to try to get rid of there's a lot of mold and stuff that can grow, and different like viruses that birds can get, like the conjunctivirus, which is the finches get that a lot. They have the eye infection.
Well, let me ask you here, when you say a 10% bleach solution, you're saying like taking ordinary kitchen bleach?
Yeah.
And it's
just
1 part of bleach to
Yes.
9 parts?
A small part of bleach, a very weak bleach solution. And just like I said, let it dry, spray it down, let it dry for a few minutes, and then wash it really good.
Okay,
And
when you
that
say
just-
spray it down, so you should put that in a spray
put it in a
bottle?
little spray bottle. Is
And
what
that's
we
how you
have.
can get inside the tube
Yep.
well?
Yeah, usually what I do is I wash it first, I scrub it and stuff, and then with just water and a rag, and then or a brush, and then spray it down, let it sit for a few minutes, and then wash and rinse it again, and then you're good to go. So, so the problem with a lot of the cheaper feeders is you can't take them apart. You can't wash them, and so this one's maybe like a few dollars more. You can find it anywhere like Walmart or Amazon, of course, sells everything, and you can just very easy to clean. So this also is not painted, so a lot of times I notice that the ones that are painted, the paint comes off after a year or so. But it works great. And then the other feeder I recommend is the dome feeder. You might have to go back a couple slides, but the dome feeder is round. Oh, there we go. And it has and basically so bigger birds may have trouble landing on the tube feeder. But the bigger birds can land in this dome feeder, and this is really easy to clean. Again, this is the Droll Yankee makes this, and you can take it apart and clean it very easily. But it has like different heights that you can raise this hood on top, but keeps the seed dry. So that with throwing seed on the ground is what I recommend for bird feeding. So it's pretty easy.
Yeah, when you go to the store or anything, they have all these marvelous different bird feeders, but when you're coming right down to it, what's best for the birds? And these are the kinds of things that you're talking about. Well, as you've been talking, there have been some, I guess little red flags going off. We talked about squirrels, we talked a little bit about predators like predator birds and cats and all. There are a number of dangers that really, when you get into the idea of feeding birds,
you're feeding everything.
You're feeding everything, yes.
Yep.
And what can we do? There are also some dangers specifically with bird feeders.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, for instance, enticing the birds closer to the house, and then they get disoriented. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I forget the actual measurements, but if you put a feeder like maybe 4 feet or 5 feet away from a window, the bird is not going to really gain enough speed to really harm themselves. But then there's a certain range that you want to avoid, putting the feeders, and I think it's over 5 feet. And then farther distance is not a problem either. But when you put them close, like even the window feeder, it's not going to be a problem. With that said, when a hawk, like a Cooper's hawk or a sharp-shinned hawk, which are birds that feed on songbirds, is chasing a bird, that's their tactic, is to drive the bird into a window or into a wall of a house or something, because that's how they capture the bird. So when a bird sees a hawk, it's going to panic and fly into something. So that's the hawks know that. So that's the way they hunt their prey. So unfortunately, there's really nothing you can do. But I do have some slides to show you that sometimes helps. And so this is a silhouette of a hawk that you put around the window, and it's basically.
Let me ask you there. Now, when I first saw that slide, I thought that was a picture of a hawk, but you're saying this is something you put on the window? It's like a vinyl
sticker that you stick on there, and it's just the cutout, the outline of a hawk. And this basically breaks up the reflection of the window. So birds don't understand window glass, and they have no idea what that is. So they see it as, yes, an opening, but this helps to break the reflection of the window. So I think it helps with the collisions with windows. But like I said, it doesn't help if a hawk is chasing the bird. The next one is, I think I have it on there, if you can see it, it's actually a decal of a spider web. And in nature, the birds try to avoid flying into spider webs. So that's the theory behind this. So if they see that spider web, they're gonna, on the decal of a spider web on the window, might help them avoid flying into it. But you just want to break that reflection. The other thing is you can leave your windows dirty. That's the easiest
dirty
solution.
Window is good.
It's very inexpensive, and it's
it means you don't have to go outside in the middle of winter and clean your windows. Just let them get dirty all winter and keep the birds away. Well, I'm thinking right now, when you say break up the reflection, at this time of year, or really all of you can buy things like those Klingon snowflakes and things like that.
Absolutely.
And that can be left up all winter.
Just breaking up that reflection.
And would it help to have that other times of year?
Sure, if you don't mind looking at
Well, it doesn't have to be snowflakes, but I mean, they're all kind of clingy designs,
like flowers or something,
that could be on.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the birds that you may see, and I'll go through these pretty quick. But black-capped chickadee is one of the birds, and you can probably pause this video and actually watch or look at these slides a little bit more closely. Before I forget, All About Birds is the website to go to to find more about birds and pictures of birds and information. So black-capped chickadee, northern cardinal, which everybody is familiar with. This is the male cardinal. Next one is the female, which is, I always tell everybody, it looks like she's wearing lipstick, so that's the way to identify it. But they're not as red, more tan in color.
Well, while we're talking about cardinals, they seem to be the ones that are the feistiest of the birds and the ones most likely to go up to a window. And why do they do that? Why do they do that?
Yeah, I've seen them in the fall, but a lot of times in the spring, because they see the reflection, they think it's another bird, and they get very territorial, especially in the spring, and then they'll a lot of times beat on your window with their bill, which, but once again, just breaking up that reflection, leaving your windows dirty is something that would work, or sort of work. Tufted titmouse is the next bird. So they kind of look like a cardinal with the crest, but a little bit smaller and different color, of course. Next one would be blue jay. These are interesting birds. They can mimic hawks and other birds. And a lot of people, they also drive away birds at your feeding area. The interesting thing is I've heard this before, where they actually mimic a hawk sound. All the birds fly away, and then the blue jays come in. So it's like that, all the other birds are thinking it's a hawk, and they fly away, and the blue jays come into the feeders, which is kind of ingenious. Next one is American goldfinch. These actually molt, and so this is the winter plumage right here. The next one, you see the summer. So everybody thinks this is always a different bird, but it's the same bird. It just molts the feathers. And so they go from a bright yellow to like an olive green in the wintertime. Next one is a house finch. So these are some common birds that you'll see. This is the male. And the common, so any of these that you see the Canada flag up in the corner, these are birds that visit Ohio for the winter time, so they're just here for the winter, and then they'll go back, a lot of them, to Canada in the spring. And you can see the map right here. The blue is kind of the winter range, and they go way up north into Canada, so that it's hard to see the orangish pink color. Way up north is where they breed.
I had no idea that there were birds who came south
Yep.
to Ohio.
So this is their Florida, like Ohio is their Florida, yeah.
And we have birds who leave here
Yes.
and go farther south.
Farther south, so all depends on food. So they say this year is going to be good for a lot of the birds from Canada because it was a bad seed crop, meaning there's not a lot of seed up in Canada this year. So it should be a really good year for some of these birds. Purple finch is another one from Canada, so really, really pretty. Pine siskin, another one from Canada. They look like the goldfinch, but a lot more striped on the belly. And then usually you see these in groups more than just like a single one. Next we have white-breasted nuthatch. So this is a lot of these are resident birds, meaning they're here all year round. We do have, this bird is kind of interesting because the next slide is the right direction. They actually do feet upside down, and they can go head first straight down like a tree and walk down the tree. So it's interesting to watch these guys. Next one is actually, we've starting to see these already, the red-breasted nuthatch from Canada. Some years are really good as far as seeing these birds. This is just here for the winter, and this is a good year to see these. We're already seeing lots of them at our Wolf Creek Environmental Center. Mourning dove, a resident bird. More of a ground-feeding bird. Dark-eyed junco from Canada as well. But there are a few that nest in whips ledges, Hinckley. So. A song sparrow is a resident bird. Some of the sparrows are hard to ID, but a lot of identification marks you want to look for. This particular one, if you go to the next slide, has kind of has like sideburns underneath it, and then has a spot in the center, and almost looks like an upside down triangle if you connect the dots. So this is an easy way to identify this. Tree sparrow, they are from Canada. They have a spot right in the center of their chest. So if you go to our next slide. Yes, right there. So that's an easy way to identify these guys. The next one would be a white-throated sparrow. They have a white throat.
Makes sense.
So, yep. And then the next one is a white-crowned, so they have a white crown on top of their head. But they also have this gray bar behind their head. Sometimes it can be confusing with the white-throated, but look for that gray bar. That kind of gives it away.
Looks like they have a winter scarf on.
Yep, a winter scarf, that's a good way to describe it. Field sparrow, a tiny little sparrow with a pink bill. Sometimes you can see them at your feeders. The next one would be our fox sparrow, which is a giant sparrow. And they're really pretty, like a chocolate brown color. So we'll probably see a few of these this year as well from Canada. Next one is our house sparrow, which everybody is probably familiar with these. These are resident birds, and there's and usually when you see them, sometimes at your feeders, you see like 50 or 60, so.
I thought those were the only kind of sparrows there were.
Yeah, exactly. The funny thing is, actually, there's other sparrows that hang out with the house sparrow, like the tree sparrow and stuff. It's kind of funny to see. But downy woodpecker, here's some of the woodpeckers that we have. This is our smallest one. The male has the red head. Hairy woodpecker, it's just bigger. It looks like the downy, but bigger bill. Next one would be our red-bellied, which is always misidentified as the red-headed woodpecker, which is different. But these are a common woodpecker. They have like a red mohawk, the males do. And then the northern flicker, sometimes we see, has a lot of spots on their chest. And then the pileated woodpecker, which is our biggest woodpecker. The cartoon Woody Woodpecker was inspired by this particular woodpecker, but they're really cool to see, really big. Brown creeper from Canada as well. So Carolina wren, which is actually a resident bird. So obviously it was named that in Carolina, or North or South Carolina. Eastern towhee, another bird that you can occasionally see in the winter. And then the next one would be, and then the Eastern Towhee. It's kind of funny to talk about. They actually, one of their songs is, it sounds like "Drink Your Tea," so they're easy to identify. And then the Starlings, which sometimes in the winter can be in the thousands, you know. So when they land at your feeder, it's very interesting. And crows, of course. And then the next one, grackle, and cowbirds. Brown-headed cowbird, they call them. And then they occasionally the red-winged blackbird. You can see sometimes they do. Some will stay here for the winter. Depends on our winter. Depends on the food source. Everything else like that. But a lot of them will go down south. Red-wing has it's named because of the red on the wing. The next one, the female, is actually all brown in color. They have a kind of a white stripe above their eye. And then the eastern bluebirds. And then the next one would be the robin. And these are ones that you can see during the winter if there's food available. So moving on, the turkey, and go through these really quick. Just some other animals you can see at your feeders. And then of course the hawks we already talked about. Next, squirrels. And I was going to say the baffles, you can keep on going with the slides. The baffles prevent the squirrels from getting on the feeders. And yep, just some of the other various animals you can see. Now we don't have a resident, we don't have black bears like an official population in Medina County, but there are a few in Ohio that wander in, and usually they're on your feeders. When people see them, sometimes they show up on bird feeders. So.
Well, I had no idea that there were so many different varieties of birds, and I'm glad that you've given us some tips on how we can help them get through the winter.
Yep.
But another way to get through the winter is with the events at the Park District.
Go to
we
our
have an Ice Age coming
absolutely.
up.
The Ice Age is during Christmas break, and go to our website, medinacountyparks.com. This is the best place to view all of our activities that's going on in our park.
Well, Mark, it's been wonderful having you with us. We'll already start planning on bringing you back next year.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I hope that you'll all join us again. Thank you so much, and tune in again. Have a wonderful day.
Since 1971, RSVP has been matching volunteers' talents to community needs. RSVP is affiliated with the Corporation for National and Community Service, a national organization that supports service and volunteering through grant-funded projects. Volunteers organize neighborhood watch programs, tutor children, renovate homes, plant community gardens, assist victims of natural disasters, and serve their communities in many other ways. RSVP offers maximum flexibility and choice to its volunteers as it matches the personal interests and skills of Americans 55 and older with opportunities to serve their communities. If you're interested in adding more meaning to your life and improving the lives of others, please call 330-253-4597, extension 166.